Kiros's voice boomed, shaking the already unstable stadium.
Vekor welcomes the High Sovereign. All hail Agrona Vritra. I suspect he survived because my daughter somehow sacrificed herself using the ether arts of her dragon mother, which serves me well. Sylvie was always the greater danger than your little quadra-elemental friend.
Some people you know, some people you don't. You used to be close, but people can go from people you know to people you don't.
How about we make a promise? I promise to stay alive so that we can have a future together, a relationship, a family. I watched helplessly as Tess walked away, the sound of blood pounding in my head, muting everything else. I couldn't even hear my own shouts as I begged Tess to stop, to let me fight, to let me die.
You mean you're actually going to kill me?
I mean just that.
Well, go ahead.
I'll do this my own way.
Won't do it. You can't pull the trigger. You can't pull it because you love me. It takes a very brave, a very cold woman to do that, Catherine. I don't think you can.
A pearlescent oval opened over the arena floor, 20 feet in front of the high box. Two figures stepped through. The first was someone I had never seen in person before, but I knew him instantly, and the mere sight of him was enough to sober me from my fatigue. The second, I was less prepared for. Tessia looked exactly as she had when I'd last seen her. Although she looked the same, she was immediately and unequivocally not Tessia. This person masquerading as my oldest friend moved with aggressive confidence. Logically, I understood what I was looking at. But the cold, distrustful look Cecilia gave me from Tessia's eyes still drove a knife through my chest. Agrona's appearance wasn't unexpected, necessarily, but Tessia? Cecilia? Could Tessia even be saved? Was she still in there somewhere? And if she could, was protecting her more important than depriving Agrona of the legacy? I hadn't been ready to face these questions. I still wasn't. Clear crystal bars thrust up out of the ground in a square, with me at the center. The crystal had a liquid smoothness to it, turning just above my head so the bars all ran together, forming a cage. Cecilia had pulled all the mana out of the atmosphere, even out of my body. If I still relied on a mana core, this single spell would have left me powerless. I couldn't even begin to wrap my mind around how such a thing was even possible. I find myself quite eager to see how your new abilities function. I'll take great pleasure in dismantling you piece by piece to find out. I glanced around the stadium. I was surprised to see Kara with one foot on the scorched dirt of the combat field, fallen into a kneel at Agrona's presence, which must have interrupted her rushing out to check on me. She, too, risked lifting her head just enough to watch me. There was genuine terror in her scarlet gaze as her lips moved in some silent prayer. She had been a good friend to me. While I'd been gazing around the Colosseum, the scythes had flown out of the high box and maneuvered around the arena floor to box me in. I again met Cecilia's eyes, searching within them for something, some sign. I had made a promise, but I didn't even know if the woman to whom I'd promised myself was alive in her own body. Agrona waved for the scythes to take me. I'll admit, I'm ever so slightly disappointed. I expected you'd have yet another trick up your sleeve. Still, even if what I've witnessed from you so far is the extent of your abilities, I'm sure I'll find dissecting you a useful distraction. I had to decide. It was time to leave. I could go without her, or I could try to take her with me, try and find some way to pull Cecilia out of Tess's body, bring her back. Or I grew slightly sick at the thought. But it was the clearest path forward, the most decisive measure. I could assure that Agrona couldn't use Tessia or Cecilia, that whatever power the legacy had couldn't be controlled. I felt my eyes grow wet, but I hardened my heart. Forgive me, Tessia. Bracing myself, I channeled ether throughout my exhausted body. The cage bars were unnaturally strong, but my armor and Asuran physique protected me as I crashed through them, sending crystalline shards spraying in every direction. Mid-step, I conjured the ether blade, drew it back, aimed for her core. Her teal eyes followed me every inch of the way, as if she were able to trace my progress even when using burst step. When the tip of my sword was pressed against her sternum, her eyes widened and flashed green. Mossy green veins spread out across her face beneath her skin, and for an instant she looked resigned as a strained smile graced her painted lips. Her body trembled, her hand rising not for the blade, not in defense, but toward my face. A caress. Art, please. It was Tessia's voice. I released the ether blade. She held my eyes for a heartbeat, two. Then, the green veins receded. Tess, Cecilia took a step back, giving me a look of deepest loathing. "Oh, that was close, wasn't it?" Agrona said, amused. "You really thought for a second you could do it, didn't you? You're only cold-hearted and calculating when it's easy, Gray. In reality, you're weak, emotional, and rather prone to attachment." What should have been a moment of victory instead rang hollow and empty, filling my mouth with a taste of cold ashes. "Take him," Agrona ordered. The scythes closed in. Agrona's confident smirk finally slipped away as I activated God's Step. He reached for me, his power suddenly unleashed. His look of astonishment was the last thing I saw as the etheric pathways took me far away from the Colosseum and the Victoriad.
Where am I? I wondered, pulling back from something moving beneath me. A hand extended out from the light. Its delicate strength seemed familiar, felt like looking in a mirror, and I grasped it with frantic strength. The hand pulled me to my feet. It was Tessia Eralith. "My vessel, what is happening?" I asked, frustrated by the weakness of my own voice. I felt like a whimpering child standing before her, but the elven woman was completely at ease in this clearing at the heart of a storm of strangling vines and roots. "Where are we?"
"In your mind,"
she answered simply.
"You are dreaming, and your subconscious is trying to convey what is happening inside of us."
A dark green, snake-like coil bumped against me, and I took a nervous step toward the center of the clearing. I brushed a lock of dusty brown hair out of my face, unsure what to say.
"It's the Elderwood Guardian Arthur gifted to me,"
she continued, casting a thoughtful, sad sort of look around.
"Our body absorbed its mana core. Integration, I never knew."
She shook her head in wonder.
"When the core dissolved, the Elderwood Guardian's beast will was released. As, I suppose, was I."
She shrugged, as if the second point didn't mean very much to her.
"The unconstrained will is feeding off the mana now integrated within our body. It is tearing us apart."
My body. I ground out, the word art stabbing like a dagger into my mind each time she said it. A humorless smile played at the edges of her lips, but I couldn't read the intent behind her expression. Even as we were talking, the clearing in which we stood was shrinking. A pulse like a slow heartbeat ran through them every few seconds, and with each beat they grew. I tried to close my eyes, wanting to focus, but I couldn't. A dream, I remembered. How do I stop it? There was cold fire in the elf's eyes as she answered. "You control it." Only, she paused, watching a tendril of leafy vine uncurl beside my face. "You can't. The Elderwood Guardian's beast will isn't just mana for you to dominate. It takes time, focus, and a little bit of luck. We don't have time. This body will be dead within the hour." I gnashed my teeth and stepped toward her threateningly. When she looked at me with pitying amusement, I suddenly felt like a child balling my fist at an adult, and I hated it. "You'll die too then," I ground out, struggling to maintain my senses and not give way to despair. "I don't think you." The words caught in my throat as I remembered her wrestling for control of my body when Gray had attacked me at the Victoriad.
"I don't want to die, but I am willing to. We are enemy combatants, Cecilia. If we met on opposite sides of the battlefield, I would be ready to lay down my life to defeat you. Here, if I could trade my life for yours, wouldn't it be worth it?"
"Please," I begged in a raspy whisper, reaching for her hands. My life was stolen from me, all because of an accident of my birth, something I couldn't control. I never asked for any of this. I just want my life back. You can understand that, can't you? Eventually, Agrona will send me back to my me and Nico. You can have this body back when I'm gone. I promise it. Tessia let out a little, musical laugh, then covered her mouth and looked at me with a sickening fusion of mirth and pity. I sat up straight and glared at the elf. "You don't understand anything. You have no idea what I've been through." Her brows crept up as the amusement in her smile bled away, leaving only sadness.
"Nothing you've ever done, no thought you've ever had, is a secret from me. So much about Arthur makes sense, now, knowing everything. His maturity, his confidence, even as a child, and I thought you'd be the same, having lived. You're a child, stunted. You haven't had 2 lives, not even one. Which is why you can't see what's being done to you. You know, of course, but you don't see."
I reached for my mana, wanting nothing more than to burn the elf's soul from my mind, but my magic was gone. I was defenseless, empty. It was my worst nightmare come true. In my despair, I failed to notice the vine wrapping itself around my right arm. When I finally realized what was happening, I flinched away from it, but it held me fast. Then they were all over me, and Tessia just watched with that distant sadness. I wanted to curse her, beg her, but I couldn't do anything. I was paralyzed. The Elderwood Guardian was choking the life from me, both in the dream and out of it. I was dying. I couldn't believe it. It felt so purposeless, so empty of meaning. But this was, I woke up.
when you say, make me look the other way. I don't wanna know, so I'ma let it fade. Baby,
Leave the fucking dragons to me.
Destruction was mine now. It belonged to me. With it, I could burn the heart from my enemy's chest, turn the air in his lungs to fire, boil the blood in his veins. I pictured the amethyst flame spreading across all of Alacria, erasing a continent from existence. Then, Agathan would be peaceful again. My visions tinged a shade of lavender as ether gathered around me. The motes of purple danced as if celebrating my ascension to the throne. I truly felt like a deity. Like an Asura.
She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all
Now everything that was in my way is gone. And everyone else still believes in him. It's only a matter of time before I get rid of the police. What do you think of that, El? This is my perfect victory! That's right! I win! I'm Mr. Sing!
Now, there was something akin to real terror in them. These creatures had been trained to wage a quiet, shadowy war against deities. But they were children playing at being gods. They understood nothing. They were nothing.
I couldn't let the wraiths retreat. Not even one. They all had to die. Grinning and burning, I laughed. A single, long, mirthful, insane laugh as the last of the wraiths, a grown as supposed Asura killers, fell before me.
A purple flash lit up the highest level of the cavern. Standing at the high road's edge near the palace, Arthur LEYWIN stood armored in gold-rimmed black scales with onyx horns curling down from the sides of his head like a vritra. He stepped forward, closer to the edge, and each footfall was the beating of a war drum. The sound of it swelled in my chest, setting my heart racing and blood pumping with adrenaline. The enemy, on the other hand, shrank. The Alacrian mages pulled back, huddling close behind their shields, frightened eyes turning to the sides. The sides seemed to dim. The entire city seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, Arthur raised one arm. In it, he held a broad black horn that curled like a mountain ram's. He tossed it over the edge, and it seemed to fall unnaturally slowly, turning over again and again.
Agrona has exhausted my patience for the last time,
he said, his voice rolling like thunder through the cavern. The sides flinched backward, and a tremor ran through the Alacrian forces.
You have 10 seconds.
The Alacrians broke. Men shouted as they stamped and shoved, bowling over one another in an effort to retreat back through the raw hole in the cavern wall. Melsry and Viessa floated up slightly. Together, they bowed slightly, then turned and flew out of the cavern, over the heads of their retreating soldiers. Then they were gone. Just like that, the battle won.
How many gods fall, there will always be another to stand against you. They will fall as well.
Want to know what I've become? Driving my blade through his neck. God killer should be appropriate.
I can never snitch. That's all.
once the great King Gray, powerful warrior, fallen to his death, but reborn as Arthur LEYWIN, a child with magical abilities. He has been given a second chance at life.
This is what Agrona has been researching for the last few hundred years, Gray. And your reincarnation was what allowed the gears to start turning, Nico said. And that was how I was able to reincarnate into this world. After all, if someone deserves a new life, it isn't you. It's Cecilia and me. Bullshit.
One of those orphans did not fall into the hands of those deities. The one who in his world was known as King Gray, who was only filled with a thirst for revenge, now in this world known as Arthur LEYWIN, self-proclaimed as God Killer, recognized as a true deity, is going to put an end to this entire war of gods.